This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.
Well, hey, everyone, it's Mark Bayer, and you are tuned to When Science Speaks. Thank you so much for being along with us. This episode is sponsored by Bayer Strategic Consulting in Washington, D.C., which helps scientists get funding, gain influence, and build strategic relationships with the stakeholders who matter most in their professional lives. And that journey often involves effective translation of complicated research into engaging, jargon-free communication that boils down complex topics to capture the attention of general audiences. If you're interested in getting a free resource to help you do just that, simply go to complexitymadeclear.com to get 11 keys for translating complexity. That's complexitymadeclear.com to get your free infographic. It's used by science communicators at major organizations to boil down but never dumb down complicated science and technical topics for general audiences. It is such a great pleasure to have Ali Debow and Weilyn Chong on the show today. Ali Debow is a Gen Z entrepreneur born and raised in Hong Kong with a Canadian background. She's passionate about being the entrepreneurial cross-cultural bridge between Chinese and Western business and is a student at New York University, Shanghai. Ali is co-founder with Weilyn of the Entrepreneurs Network and co-hosts along with Weilyn the Entrepreneurs Podcast, which is a web series for and by female entrepreneurs in college. Founder and CEO of Alive Vibe, an interactive virtual events platform connecting Gen Zs globally. Ali also is founder of Entrepreneurs in Action, which is a community that brings together like-minded young entrepreneurs pursuing their passions in China. She's also team leader at Alibaba's global digital talent light entrepreneurship program focused on creating a Chinese-based borderless brand. Weilyn Chong is originally from Singapore and grew up in the Netherlands, Singapore, and Hong Kong. She's a second-year student concentrating in economics and minoring in computer science at Princeton University and is also a Division I lightweight rower. Weilyn is passionate about female entrepreneurship, which led her to create the Entrepreneurs Network, a prominent network for and by female entrepreneurs that has a reach of more than 18,000 and has been featured on Yahoo Finance and MarketWatch. Most recently, Weilyn has joined the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center as an advisory board member to mentor young entrepreneurs and to help build a more equitable entrepreneurial space. At Princeton, Weilyn is director of Princeton Women in Entrepreneurship. She co-created Tiger Ventures Unfiltered, a media network focused on college entrepreneurs, and is conducting research in both entrepreneurship and politics, two of my passions as well. Welcome to the show, Ali and Weilyn. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're super excited for the conversation today.
So you are both energized by and focused on entrepreneurship. And I'd like to start with Ali for this, and then Weilyn, I'd like you to chime in on your thoughts too. What about entrepreneurship fascinates you?
I think there's so many things about entrepreneurship that fascinate me. And it's something that I've been exposed to, luckily, since I was a kid with entrepreneurial parents, being in Hong Kong and the community that we were brought up around. But something that excites me as a young adult is just the diversity and opportunities that come with it. Whereas in some different types of fields, in different industries, you usually have a type of person. Being an entrepreneur is not a one size fits all. And that's something that Weilyn and I really help share on the Entrepreneurs Podcast and the Entrepreneurs Network as well. It's not just a 20-year-old Silicon Valley guy. It is a 47-year-old Art Deco in New Brunswick. It is a Colombian musician, and it's everything. And that's what's so cool about entrepreneurship, to see the diversity in ideas, diversity in people, and of course, solutions that come with that.
Really, so cool, so cool. Weilyn, what drives you on to be attracted to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's three main things that drive me to entrepreneurship. The first is service. I grew up watching my grandfather being kind of like an entrepreneurial model for me, where he would wake up really early and he would serve the homeless in Singapore and give them breakfast and give them coffee. And I watched service and entrepreneurship kind of be the center and see that intersection at such a young age. So that drives me towards entrepreneurship, this ability to give back to your community. I think the reason that entrepreneurship is important to me now is because for two reasons. The first is that it embraces creation and it embraces being able to create new things to help people. And the second is this idea of that you're going into entrepreneurship with no fear of failure. And I think this idea of not being afraid of failure is so integral with entrepreneurship and really makes you kind of, as you enter the space, really makes you reconsider that.
Yeah, thank you for pointing out that example too, that model in your own personal life. A lot of people don't necessarily, they have a much more narrow view of what entrepreneurship even is. But it isn't just this Silicon Valley 20-year-old guy somewhere. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's that plus. Many listeners of the show are interested in entrepreneurship, but they might not know where to start or even have a good fix on what it means. So your context straight away was really helpful. Weilyn, could you talk a little bit about how you would recommend that listeners who might be interested in how they might develop or sharpen skills that you have found to be particularly valuable in your entrepreneurship journey so far?
I can kind of break this down into like hard skills and soft skills. I think that's probably the easiest way to do that. In terms of soft skills, I think the most important thing is to be confident in your ideas and being confident in what you present. So I think if you are presenting an idea or a company with a strong mission and vision, and you truly believe that, it's really hard to fail. And if you put your all into that idea, I think it's very possible that any startup could work and be successful if you're driven by a very clear why. In terms of hard skills, I think being organized, but also just being able to push yourself and not be afraid of failure are other skills that you can kind of hone, whether it's in your academic life or whether it's like at college or at school, or even in your corporate job. I think being able to face failure and have a mechanism to deal with it is a skill that you can hone no matter if you're starting your own company or expressing your entrepreneurial journey in some other way.
Yeah, thanks for that. Ali, what are your thoughts on this? Some of the skills and qualities that you found to be particularly useful in your work?
Absolutely. So I've learned the skill of just starting, no matter what you have. Okay, you've got an education, whatever capital, people are around you, just going ahead and starting. And I say this in mind because in 2 days, we're actually hosting, as a co-organizer, the Why Wait Collective, which is the first Gen Z-led female entrepreneurship conference in Shanghai. And we've got activities and events and panels, speakers, all that sort of thing. But the name Why Wait brings in this idea of why are you waiting? Just go for it, just do something. And I think too often people in life, we kind of wait for an opportunity, everything for it to be perfect. Many entrepreneurs are self-proclaimed perfectionists. And people say this as an interview, ironically, oh, it's my greatest flaw. But like it can be a flaw because then it can stop you from actually going ahead and starting. So I would just say, why wait and get started?
Yeah, I love it. And it is so true. And the amount of energy that it takes to go from zero, to whatever, just to get that beginning velocity can be so difficult as you're waiting for the conditions to be perfect. And then you realize as you get more experience, the conditions are never going to be perfect. And actually you wouldn't want to wait anyway, right? Because you don't really know enough
Exactly.
if you wait. So I'd love to be able to promote what the conference coming up too, and we'll have some information about that for listeners in the show notes. The entrepreneur's life can be really hard. I mean, Weilyn talked about, being able to embrace failure and really push yourself. And there are a lot of hurdles along the way. And, you're relatively young in the game, still in college, and you've accomplished so much and continue to do all these new and creative and important things. I wonder if you could talk, and Weilyn, why don't we start with you, some of the hurdles that you've experienced as a Gen Z female entrepreneur, and also how your work with the Entrepreneurs Network and the Entrepreneurs Podcast aims to help female entrepreneurs overcome these and related challenges.
Yeah, for sure. So 2 questions there. So the first one is, what were some hurdles that we faced building the Entrepreneurs podcast? And I can kind of talk about one of the main ones at the beginning was definitely like a lack of confidence and almost a sense of embarrassment at the product that we were creating. I think at the beginning, being, young Gen Zs and being surrounded by, other college students, it's not the norm that everyone's starting a podcast. It's not the norm that everyone's starting a startup. So when we first came up with our first, I think like 5 episodes, and my friends would ask me about it and they were really excited about the things that we were building, I'd kind of be like, oh, like, I don't know, like, I guess it's cool. Like, I guess it's fun. Like, it's just something small. It's just a project. And I almost had to take a step back and be like, hey, like, the work that we're creating is really awesome because it's creating communities, it's creating conversations for female entrepreneurs to build the future of female entrepreneurs. And that's not something to be embarrassed about. That's something that's empowering and something that's beautiful. And I think it was taking the step back like, hey, nobody else in this room thinks it's embarrassing that we started a company. In fact, everyone in the room is thinking that this is an amazing thing, that like, how are these young college students doing that? So I think definitely gaining confidence in that area. And then just a small thing about like the Entrepreneurs Network, how we're helping others build and overcome those hurdles. If you look at some of the data around female entrepreneurs, one of the main things is female entrepreneurs or young college students who are females don't necessarily see the role models or don't hear about, awesome female entrepreneurs who are killing it in the space. And 2, they lack that confidence of starting their own business. And I think the Entrepreneurs Network is doing a really good job of not only highlighting awesome role models in the space, but also creating intimate conversations with female founders, with people who have struggled and have created their own path in this journey and being able to share that.
Yeah, it's funny because I really see a connection between the first answer you gave and the second, which is like in the beginning, what you were doing was really outside the norm. So that, there's a lot of uncertainty and you said embarrassment about it. But what you're doing in the second part is really normalizing this kind of activity. So making it easier for other Gen Z female entrepreneurs to kind of see like, hey, actually other people who are like me are doing this, which is so cool. Allie, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Weilyn brings up some really, really important points, but I'm going to take kind of the opposite angle with hurdles. I'm actually going to replace the word hurdle with steps because I think as a Gen Z female entrepreneur, as many hurdles as you might traditionally think about having a lack of experience, lack of funding, lack of education, all that sort of thing, relative to other people in the space, it's also kind of been our edge. And Weilyn and I have definitely honed into that, both from like the college angle, tapping into the resources we have at college. We're part of the Princeton eLab, which is an opportunity we would not have if we were not 19 years old in college, having access to professors, even being able to shamelessly reach out to people on LinkedIn and be like, hey, I think you're cool. I think your entrepreneurial journey is fantastic. Let's hop on a call. And that ability for us to kind of be that learner, young person who just wants to be a sponge and just soak up information as a mentee has been such an opportunity for us and really allowed us to expand both our network, but also our opportunities. So I would say it's been like the best and worst thing, but definitely we've honed into the best thing in every opportunity that we've been able to use that.
Yeah, I love it. So taking what some people might see as a disadvantage and actually showing how, in fact, it can be reframed as an advantage. That's really, really cool. And, another thing that you both have in common is that you're both immersed in cross-cultural environments, personally and professionally. I'm wondering if you could share advice you have for those who don't have such a global perspective and in terms of how to increase mutual understanding across borders on a personal level, which is a passion of mine, and also how to succeed in enterprises and organizations that have cross-cultural workforces. And Allie, if you could start with that, you're coming to us from Hong Kong. So maybe you should just give us a sense of this, this is your everyday life.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually in Shanghai right now. I've been in Shanghai for the past year. But yeah, I was born and brought up in Hong Kong. My parents are both Canadian Jews. So went to an American school. So kind of a little bit of everything. Definitely feel like a global citizen. But yeah, it's just always been second nature to me. So it is kind of funny to think like reverse engineering what it is like to gain a global perspective, because the only perspective I had is a global perspective. But I think ways that I've seen people who did not grow up in such a mixing pot as I did was really with a Live Vibe, the virtual event startup I started, where people came from around the world, and maybe you never learned about a culture or a language, or you've never had a friend of a certain country or whatever. And it was really just having those one-on-one conversations. I think going back to both your interest in politics, I definitely have a political interest as a view as well. And there is a lot to be said about soft political power. Everything about how everyone loves Italy now because everyone loves pasta and everyone has a pasta restaurant in their hometown. There's a lot to be said about having that soft power and helping those cross-border conversations and having those one-on-one personal connections as well, because as much as we see these world leaders at COP26 shaking hands, doing all that stuff, there's also as many people online gaming together from around the world, or working on a project together, or doing these hackathons together from around the world. And I think we need to show more light on those day-to-day personal connections of the world working together, and not just when it comes to a political, geopolitical sort of task. So I would say just make a friend from another country online, and it's almost too easy now. LinkedIn, reach out, Instagram, tons of events, just meet someone and just talk to them like you would anyone else, from someone you know from your hometown or home city.
Great advice. And then of course you'll be shocked at how similar you are, even though you're halfway around the world from this person. Weilyn, your thoughts on that?
For sure. Actually, that brings one of the happiest memories I had coming to college, as someone who grew up born in Singapore to parents who are from Singapore, Malaysia, then moving to the Netherlands for 6.5 years, and then moving to Singapore, and then moving to Hong Kong, and then moving to New Jersey. Coming to college was, in a way, kind of scary, because all of a sudden I had to interact with people who may not have had such a global perspective, or had traveled as much as I did when I was younger. And so, there was a part of me that was a little nervous. But one of my favorite things from coming to college is that we all can sit in a room, and there's a very specific period of music that kind of brings us all together. So for Gen Zs, there's certain set of 10 songs you play at any party, you play at any study group. Everyone knows all the lyrics, regardless if they're coming from, Asia, if they're coming from the United States, Canada, wherever they're coming from. Those songs kind of connect us. And to a greater extent, and kind of extending that away from just music, I think we're in such an awesome place in terms of technology, where truly the global community doesn't just have to come from experiences with travel. It can come from experiences traveling virtually almost. And I think COVID definitely saw that, and definitely saw borders and all of those kind of more fluid in our lives. So I definitely think growing up with technology and being able to make friends across the world has definitely shaped the ability to create a global perspective without necessarily the travel component. And then for all my college listeners out there, I think there are so many great opportunities here where you can really make the most and learn from those around you, which has definitely shaped a global perspective.
Yeah, I love how you pointed out the music, because, that's a different sort of, I call it sort of frequency of connecting with someone. It's a different level, right? It's not just talking about something. It's actually more like an emotional experience that you have in common, which can bring people really together from wherever they are, particularly if it's 90s music, I think. Just kidding about that. That seems to be really popular. People who I wonder, how do you even know this song that came out in 1983? It's yeah, we listen to that all the time. Well, good. That's so true, though. That kind of connection, that can sort of that's sort of deeper on a different level than just facts and data and necessarily shared physical experiences that you've had, can really tie people together. You mentioned COVID, Weilyn, and obviously we're still suffering with this. I'm wondering how you see COVID, which has really impacted everyone around the world, affecting entrepreneurship, particularly your work across borders, if at all, or maybe you don't think it's an issue. Why don't you start, Weilyn?
Yeah, for sure. I think COVID had definitely its ups and downs, and I think everyone kind of has talked about it and reflected on it. My heart goes out, first of all, to any family or people listening who were affected directly by COVID. I truly extend my greatest empathy towards the experiences you felt. I think on the greater scheme of things, COVID, in terms of entrepreneurship, actually had some positive impacts as well as negative ones. Lots of businesses closed, but it also gave the world an opportunity for a lot of minority founders to actually start their startups. And it also gave female entrepreneurs the opportunity to, be able to start up their businesses. And more personally, COVID was when Ali and I started our business. We live who knows how many miles apart, around a 16-hour flight, I think, and completely two different sides of the world, reconnected because of COVID. And the ability to make this podcast happen and grow the Entrepreneurs Network was really in large part due to COVID, because I think if it were not for COVID, most likely we would have started something within our own school communities. And most likely we would have never reconnected and started our business. So personally, I think it affected us in a positive light, but yeah.
Sure. Actually, that raises a question that I should have asked you. And Ali, I'll ask you first. I'll ask you how you both met, how you connected to work on these initiatives together.
For sure. It's actually a funny story. So I don't know if we mentioned this, but Weilyn and I actually went to middle school and high school all the way up together in Hong Kong. And we were always friendly, but we were not good friends by any means. So it's quite funny how in March of this year, Weilyn reconnected and reached out to me and was like, hey, there's a lack of support of female entrepreneurs and all that jazz at my campus. Is the same situation with you? And I said, unfortunately, yes. And it's sometimes during the negative things that people bond over, and that's really what bonded us together. And Weilyn was like, why don't we start a podcast about female entrepreneurs? And I was like, oh yeah, because we've been talking about podcasting and we've been big fans of a bunch of podcasts for a while, both from just the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, that sort of thing, but also entrepreneurship podcasts, a lot of cool stuff. So we started this crazy idea, and that's really where it went. And we didn't connect as two good friends. So we reconnected from this. We mentioned this on a recording the other day, but it was really in between those 5 minutes after a meeting, 5 minutes before a meeting, where Weilyn and I really became what I now call one of my closest friends. And we have not seen each other in 7-8 months. We have not seen each other since starting this entire thing. We've been seeing each other since high school, when we graduated last year, which is crazy. Even so, we were able to build this whole community, our team, this network, our friendship. And I have no words. I don't know how it happened. It's beautiful. And I couldn't be more grateful for it.
Wonderful. That's so great. Well, looking forward to 2022, and we're talking right now in mid-November of 2021. Weilyn, do you have any goals as you look over the horizon besides being an ace lightweight rower that you see for yourself in 2022? Goals that are either professional, personal, or just things that you'd like to accomplish next year.
100%. I think this speaks for both my personal and professional life. I want to go into 2022 with intention kind of being my driving force. Up to this point, I feel like I am definitely someone who says yes to a lot of things because I want to explore, and I'm at such a young age where exploring is so good for me. I gained so much from learning from different diverse experiences and from just putting myself out there. So as for the lightweight rowing team, I've never rowed in my entire life. The roster came out at the beginning of the school year. I was like, hey, I'm going to give it a shot. Gave it a shot. And now I find myself rowing here at Princeton, which is awesome. But moving into 2022, I kind of want to take a step back and look at all of the things that I'm a part of and really ask myself, why am I doing each of the things and what is it bringing to my life? How is it moving the needle forward? And really being intentional with all of the actions and all of my experiences going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. Ali, what are you thinking about for 2022?
Yeah, so 2021 was a kind of a strange year for me because I haven't left China in more than a year. That means I haven't been able to see any of my friends or family who I've known for the first 18 and a half years of my life in the past year. And although I've been able to grow immensely here as a young adult, more than I could think of by any means as a second year at university, I'm excited to kind of put back the hat on of being like a daughter and a sister and a granddaughter and a niece. So outside of just professionally, because I think we all play different roles. And I've been very self-driven, very independent, which is great. And I always had that element. But at least in the next 2, 3 months, as I'm going to be thankfully spending some time with my family, I'm excited to see how being part of those elements again, being or tapping into those parts of my identity again, will continue my own entrepreneurial journey.
I love it. A nice rounded way of looking at life, fantastic. Well, Weilyn Chong, Ali Debow, it's been fantastic having you on When Science Speaks. I really appreciate you making time across time zones to be here and to talk and to share your expertise and experiences with our listeners.
Thank you for having us. It was great chatting.
And thank you for so many awesome questions. Really just got the time to reflect and speak about our entrepreneurial journey has been really cool. So thank you.
Great. You're welcome. And listeners, the resources that Ali and Weilyn were talking about are going to be available in the show notes for this episode. And I appreciate you making time to spend with us on this episode of When Science Speaks. And I hope you'll be back next time for the next episode of When Science Speaks.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe. Check us out on the web at whensciencespeaks.com, and we'll see you next time.